time zones. Welcome to this session on community engagement and participation in displacement. So my name is Amalia Torres. I work in the IOM CCCM Global Support Team, and I will be moderating this session together with my colleague Elena.
Hi everyone, I'm Elena. I work with the IOM CCCM Global Support Team, and specifically on the Women Participation Project you will hear also about today.
And then we also have a moderator online, that is Christine. Christine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name is Kristin Westström, and I work for NRC, and I moderate the Community Engagement Forum. Thank you.
Great. So now we introduce the moderators. We want to know also about who is in the room. So you have provided us some information from the Menti. So but not everybody. Okay, so we only have 5 responses. Well, hopefully you come from different places in the world.
Did you all see the link that was shared in the previous slide? There was a link that you could you can take with your phone, and there we will be using it also after. So it's not only for this first question, but for some questions after.
Engagement.
Or you can also go to www.menti.com and insert the code that you see on the screen, 55766568.
Okay, we have 13.
Okay. Great. We have somebody coming from Antarctica. The North Pole. That's great. That was we were not expecting. Maybe next question, Patri. So to know a bit the background of colleagues in the room. Okay, so a lot of humanitarian practitioners, civil society, and other. Great. So we also want to introduce this session talking about who are we and why we're talking about participation and community engagement during displacement. So next slide. This is the session structure. We're going to do an introduction, then we're going to have a panel discussion. We will introduce very shortly the panelists. Then we will have some testimonies from Cox's Bazar in the form of a video, and then we will have hopefully some time for Q&A from the audience, those in the room, but also those online. And then at the very end of the session, we would like to finish with some conclusions and actionable recommendations, because we want to ground the discussion into questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are part of the global CCCM cluster. What is CCCM? Apologize for those that know very well, but just to set the tone of the introduction. So basically, we are part of the camp coordination and camp management cluster. What do we do? So what is our, let's say, what are our actions? So we are improving the living conditions during displacement of displaced populations through ensure access to protection of IDPs in the displacement site, access to protection and assistance, so basic services. One of our also roles is to actually contribute to the identification of durable solutions to end the temporary displacement. So as you see, the camp management house, some of you might know it. So you see participation is at the base of it, right? So participation is really at the heart of what CCCM does. It's really complicated to manage a camp if you don't have involvement of the displaced population. It's basically impossible. So we have been actually, working a lot with the communities because of the nature of what we actually do. Next slide, please. So the importance of participation during displacement, it's basically because, like I said, it's an essential pillar of good camp management. So participation refers to all the groups of displaced population. So we know that there are certain groups that tend to have easier access to participation, but our responsibility is to also enable those that have barriers to participate to do so during displacement. Participation is also critical to reduce vulnerabilities that are associated with forced displacement, right? So people that are displaced, they often lost their community networks, their livelihoods, and a lot of other things. So involving them in the decisions that are made in the camp and that affect directly their own life, it also contributes to strengthen their coping capacities. And we also know that the lack of participation of certain groups, so specifically of women or girls, in decision-making processes is indicated in the IAS GBV guidelines as a social level factor contributing to GBV risks. So we also know that having women and girls involved in decision-making from the beginning is also a way to contribute to reduce GBV risk. So it's also like important on that end. But so this is us speaking. We also want to know what participation in your specific context. So hopefully you reach out that question in the Menti as well. Okay, great. So equality is a matter of inclusion as well. Decision making, self-determination, definitely. I think related to what we said about strengthening capacity. Here, accountability. Obviously, it also it speaks to the accountability of our actions. What else? I see effective communication, quality, decision making. And then also, as I mentioned, there are different groups here in a displaced community. So some of them they have easier access to participation. Some other have more barriers. So let's see what you responded on. What groups are easier to engage? Okay. So very difficult. LGBTQI+, persons with disabilities. Okay. Women seems to be the easiest one. Interesting. That's very interesting. Well, also knowing that women can also intersect with all the other categories as well, right? So great. Okay, let's wait if there are any other people. Okay. So during the session today, we're going to focus on two specific groups that, as I said, can also intersect with other groups of displaced population that are women and youth. We're gonna do that because we have some experiences from the CCCM part in engaging women and youth. So can we go back to the presentation? So one of the experiences that I see that we will see today in this session is the Women's Participation Project. Very briefly, this is a project that started after a few years of CCCM and camp management and practitioners realizing that even accounting for 50% of the displaced population, women were rarely part of the decisions made in camp. So I don't know if you have worked in displacement, but probably you know this situation of like having a site committee or a decision-making body in a camp where or either there are no women or if there are, they won't speak. So then we thought, okay, we need to find other strategies to actually integrate women in decision-making. So that's what this project, when this project started in 2016, it was a joint collaboration between IOM and the Women's Refugee Commission in coordination with the Global Fund. It's part of a broader project, peer and funded, that reduce GBV risks and girls during displacement. As I mentioned before, there's a link between both. And the objective, as you can imagine, is to support the practitioners to develop community-led strategies to strengthen participation of women and girls in displacement. There is a toolkit that is available to all practitioners. We will talk a little bit more in detail about it later. The toolkit associated with the project. And it's a project that since the beginning has been implemented in 13 countries, currently active in 6. And then I'm gonna hand it over to Christine for the community engagement forum.
Thanks very much, Amalia. if I can see the slide. Yeah, perfect. Like I said earlier, I am the moderator for this community engagement forum, and what this is an interagency online community of practice where we discuss anything related to community engagement in displacement responses. So we're part of the CCCM cluster, but we're open to humanitarian practitioners from all clusters and sectors. So it's not just limited to CCCM and site management discussions. It's facilitated by NRC, who I work for. So our purpose, I suppose, is we came together in 2022, not even 2 full years ago, to create this platform where we could continue sharing resources and discussing everything on how to engage displaced communities in our responses. There was a lot of text messages and WhatsApp and Teams going back and forth. Do you have any resources on this? Do you have any training on this? What did you do in this situation? I have this challenge. Has anyone else experienced this? So we decided to create a platform where we could discuss this all together. Since then, we have grown and grown, and we have several events going on. We have monthly informal online events called Community Coffee and Chats, where we discuss relevant topics depending on the requests from the members of the community of practice. And we're now over 200 members, and we'll give you a chance to sign up at the end of the session. Don't worry. So we'll show you how to do that. And then for the next slide, please. I wanted to introduce you to our very, very esteemed panelists today. We've been very lucky that we have great people to join us today for this discussion and answer all your questions. So maybe I will do what Amalia did earlier with the moderators. I'll just say your name and then you can introduce yourselves. So Sophia, if we can start with you.
I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay, so hello everyone, my name is Sophia. I'm from Ukraine originally, currently living in Romania, and I'm a part of Global Refugee Youth Network. I'm Youth Action Fund Coordinator. We just finalized our project, and my role was coordinate Ukrainian youth projects in Romania and Moldova.
Thanks very much.
I'm glad to see all of you.
Thanks a million. I don't see the slide, but Emmanuel, can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. I'm Emmanuel William. I'm Congolese refugee who live in Ethiopia. I have almost 12 years in a refugee camp called Shalkole, and
We lost you froze. Emmanuel? I think Emmanuel froze. Maybe is it just
the introduction of the panelists in the room, and then let's see if his connection comes back to live.
So yeah. Emmy, you're in the room. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, everyone. I'm Emmy, joining today from CCCM Mozambique. It's very special to be here for me because I'm both working for WPP, Women's Participation Project, as well as I have been working in the advisory board of the Community Engagement Forum. So 2 families together for me today. I have been working in CCCM in Mozambique, like I mentioned, and leading the WPP there. And in the past, I have worked in various missions with IM. One of them was Cox's Bazar, where we had really strong WPP program and overall community engagement activities. So I'm really happy to be here today to talk about participation with you all.
We're very happy to have you here, Emmy. And Ingrid, can you please introduce yourself as well?
Thanks, Christine, and hi, everyone. So I'm Ingrid. I am based in Geneva currently, working on emergency preparedness. At the same time, I'm also with IOM Ukraine in CCCM and working on capacity building for all stakeholders and also on community engagement. So like Emmy, it's also a pleasure to be here. It's like a reunion of esteemed colleagues, people whom I've worked with years on community engagement. I've started working in 2016 in the pilot of WPP. At the same time, in community engagement with Christine in the inception around 2022. So I'm glad to be with you all here, practitioners and interest groups, and nice to see Bruce. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much for the introductions and for joining today. I'm going to hand over to Elena, who will start the discussion for us.
Thank you, Christine. So I'll start with the panel discussion, and then you'll also have the opportunity to ask some questions. So take note of them. So we'll give you the chance later. But I want to start asking Emmy and Sophia, but let's start with Emmy. If you can share a bit in your experience, what does meaningful participation imply in displacement? And if you have key ingredients for meaningful participation that you can share with us.
Thanks, Elena. It's a very strong question to start with. I'm going to try to be brief because I believe there is a lot to talk about participation. Although participation is not too complicated, I don't believe that it's too simple either for most of the time. That requires some effort from our side. So first of all, meaningful participation is much beyond heavy, like checking the tick boxes or including communities in the surveys or in monitoring and evaluation stages, which is very important, but it's much more than that. It's more reshaping the power dynamics and positioning the communities in the center of decision-making processes and programs, and also acknowledging that communities are not just one entity. They are diverse, there are different groups. So it's difficult to generalize as the whole community as well. So one thing that I'm going to start with is that having two-way trust. We often talk about having trust from the communities for accountability. For example, our complaint and feedback mechanisms to work efficiently and effectively, we need trust from the communities. But I guess we need to go back to ourselves as humanitarians and think how much trust we have for the communities, because it's really important for us to trust the capacities and potentials that exist in the community, and working on this and trying to empower those existing capacities as well. We often focus on capacity building. Ingrid, you are here as a capacity building coordinator, but we might even need to change our language to capacity strengthening, because we need to acknowledge what is there, and we need to acknowledge that there is a power to make to have decision making within themselves. So we need to center, when we say that we need to put communities in the center, it's not only listening from our side, which is very important to have the active listening, but also creating opportunities for communities to raise their own voices in a collective way themselves. So it's going beyond us bringing a couple of people in the same room to run a focus group discussion, but also creating sustainable opportunities for people to create their own voice in a collective way as well, because also participation goes beyond individual participation, but it is also empowering through building collective action. So we can give examples practically: community-based planning, community-led projects that would give communities opportunities to come up with things themselves. And also one thing that I think we need to give emphasis on is meaningful participation requires some groundwork, requires some preparation. So it needs some starting points. Like I mentioned, it needs some trust from both the communities, but also our trust to the communities as well, and safe spaces to raise ideas. And it's, again, for most of the time, much beyond just having a meeting. It sometimes requires skill strengthening. It requires based on the context adaptation, cultural adaptation, and continuous communication. Another thing is that I think for really important for participation is embracing the failure, but it's a joint failure. We cannot expect success from participation all the time, and it shouldn't discourage neither us nor the communities. So embracing the failure in a joint way, and also getting ready for those, mitigating the risks, but as well as knowing what to do when we face these failures, again, in a collaborative way, is very important. And finally, we in humanitarian settings, we often do short-term interventions, but meaningful participation often requires persistent and continuous commitment from our side, and oftentimes medium to long-term interventions, which also require donors' involvement as well in a committed way, but also from our side to think about things in a more persistent and sustainable way, and basically persisting the efforts even when we face challenges or problems. So meaningful participation is not easy, but also it's not too complicated when we put enough effort, I believe, and for overall resilient communities to have, it's very key for also our work to be most efficient and effective.
Thanks, Emmy. I want to ask Sophia online if you can share your key ingredients for meaningful participation in displacement, and what, based on your experience, meaningful participation in displacement imply.
Thank you. I think it's a very important question. And first of all, I want to say that one of the main key elements is a strong leaders. For working with Ukrainians, I see how it is important to have a strong leaders in a community. We had an example when young lady gathered community in Timisoara city of 2,000 people. Because of her leadership position, she could unite Ukrainian refugees and represent them in a local community. As a result, Ukrainian community was formed, represented in Romanian hosted country, and many people could have opportunities for further collaboration. Like some people find their job or could show their strong sides to the local host community. So first of all, I think that strong leaders is really important and is one of the key elements. Next thing I want to say about professional approach and deep learning. Working in humanitarian sphere, I've seen how important it is to have deep learning of the situation and professional approach, especially in humanitarian sphere, especially when the new crisis is coming up. I can share with you a little example, not really successful. We had a case when Ukrainian community was invited for the project dedicated to recycling and environmental protection. And when Ukrainians were asking what kind of garbage can be recycled and what not, actually it was challenges because there was no many people who could exactly give us a bright examples. So it's one of not a good example of unprofessional approach. That's why I think that when you work with a community, it's very important to learn the question deeply. It doesn't depend on the time you're working in the community. It depends on your approach and what result you want to bring to the project. That's why when I was working with communities, we were discussing how deeply they have learned the current situation or the actions in a current project.
And the last thing I would like to say about education and support, I've seen how it's important when young people are dedicated to what they're doing, because I see that most of the projects that we have are long-term and require long-term participation. Even if you find people with good, strong leadership position and with a professional approach, without dedication and support from humanitarian organizations, unfortunately, they will not be able to prolong their work for a long time. So dedication and support, I think, is one of the key elements in the humanitarian sphere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I also take the opportunity to draw your attention on the fact that we put up some quotes from women that have been involved in the Women Participation Project. And I think I want to echo Emmy's and Sophia's words. We had one of our member of the Women Committee in South Sudan that said participation is about being included in all the activities happening around you, and your input is valued. So really, I think, like, just echoing what Sophia and Emmy said, it's really about, not just taking that input, but also giving it value and making it at the center of our response. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you. So building on what you were saying, very good points on what is meaningful participation. I want to ask you what are the main challenges and barriers that you have experienced in facilitating meaningful participation and accessing meaningful participation, and how we as humanitarian practitioners can help address them. So I want to start with you, Emmanuel. As you were a community leader in your camp, what barriers and challenges you experienced, and what could have been done or what was done well to help address this?
Yeah, thank you so much, and very sorry for the interruption of network issue. As you said, the challenge are more because you understand someone who is living in the camp more than 12 years. It's not easy, but the challenge are more, especially like job opportunity. To get a job, it's not easy, and also, those who are incentive worker, the incentive are very less, and it can't cover the needs of refugee. And also the lack of free movement, it is still a challenge, and we need the international community and the other implementing partners to do something on it. And also there is another one we used to see as another challenge on the side of durable solution to the refugee who are in the camp. We appreciate UN and the government. They are doing well to support those people, but there is still a gap, and the way the service is reaching to the people, it is still a challenge on the side of resettlement issue. There is too much delayment. The delayment to those who have already get chance to have this opportunity, it may take more than 10 years in the process, which is creating mental health issue to the people who get that opportunity. And we need attention on that one. Yeah, there is a good thing which is done on the side of refugees, especially providing refugee status, especially because I say that I'm Congolese refugee, and they did well on that side of providing refugee status to the refugee. We appreciate it, and we need attention to that durable solution because it is one of the best way to solve the problem of refugee. So yeah, that's all on the question you said. If there is any other question, I may add something. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. And of course, we understand that the connection issues can be very challenging for one. And like you mentioned before, the gap between telling us what you need, us as humanitarian workers, and receiving training and receiving education, and then there are no job opportunities. So linking that to the market and linking it to actual job opportunities and the ability to work, it's emphasizing meaningful participation needing to lead to action.
Yeah, thank you so much. As we say, we have many talented people who have skills. We have people who have a degree, the degree holder in different faculty. We have other people who get life skills training in different areas like furniture, like construction. But the job opportunity are still a challenge. What we need to be done, if there is like a microfinancial which can support those youth who are able to work and they are not getting a chance to work due to the financial challenge, those people, they can work and build their future and support their family.
You're right. Well, thank you so much for highlighting this.
Sure.
All the way from I think you're in the UNHCR office getting connection from
Sure.
from their office.
Sure.
Emmy, would you like to answer this as well from your experience? What challenges and barriers have you experienced, and do you have any top tips on how to address this?
The
I will leave it
challenge.
to Ingrid. You said Emmy or Emmanuel? No.
Sorry, Emmy. I'm going to hand over to Emmy. And then if you have anything else to add, then please join in after Emmanuel.
And I'm going to hand over that to Ingrid.
Yeah, but
To be more
Ingrid.
participatory.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take it also and build from what Emmanuel is saying. It's really true, like the contextual realities and nuances. For example, my recent work in IOM Ukraine, and hearing also from the sharing, we as humanitarians would need to know what is meaningful for them, what is participation for them, right? In a context of an ongoing conflict, for example, women are the most the ones who are staying in the collective centers, in the sites, because the men are in the front line. So when we did some consultations on WPP, most of the volunteers are women, the site managers. So we said, like, we are here, but what we need is like what Emmanuel mentioned about livelihood. What can we do in terms of education for our children, and of course mental health and psychosocial support. So in the work that I did in terms of nuances, like for example, in Bangladesh, where we worked for a long time, they have to know also like what is participation when their language does not have a word for participation. So the challenge at first is really how do we communicate with them, how to listen to them. So we work with the community volunteers who speak their language, and they need to understand what is this concept of participation, because as practitioners, this is one of the heart of our work, especially in CCCM, in humanitarian response. But for them, like, what is participation? And then when we add meaningful, right? So it is very challenging for us, and to work closely with them on the ground, with volunteers, with the women, for example, it helps us also understand what this means for them. So moving forward, Emmanuel also mentioned about access or freedom of movement. So depending on which context you will be working on or you're working on, in some refugee setting, there might be limited movement. Hence, the participation of the women, the youth, and also other members of the community are limited, if not restricted. So these are one of the challenges that we've been working on. In another context that I've worked on in Philippines in 2016 when we started WPP. So there were also cultural norms and social practices. Like example, we worked together with my country calls them like boat people, but these are the people who like to live in the boats, right? They were displaced by a conflict induced with the non-state armed groups that started a war in the region. So and then we work also with the minority. So these both minority groups, women. So there can be it can be more granular. Some are even like person with disability. So you can see like there will be like challenges from their side in accessing this information. How do they receive information on services, access and referrals to this one. So for me, some of the barriers and challenges I've observed, so mostly example in the norms and social practices. So in the countries we've worked with, women were mostly dependent on men or male to provide their approval or their permission for them to go out. Another one on decision making. So mostly in a male patriarchal society, so the women has the decision made for them by their husbands or their fathers or their partners or the society or community leaders, which are mostly men. And then representation in camp governance. So in CCM, we always advocate from the start that the community, right? We talk about accountability to affected population. We need to listen to the community. So we advocate that they have a voice, a say in the governance system. But what if there is no governance system? So this was in the country we worked in some refugee setting. So how do we advocate also? So that was a challenge. If there's no camp governance system, so how do we have the facilitation of women to be able to make their voices heard? So I mentioned already on decision making as well. And in the onset, the perception of safety. So even amongst women and the children and the youth, young girls, their perception of safety, like to go out of their shelters, to go out of their sub blocks probably, they fear that one, which hinders them to access to camp services, to engage in camp activities and decision making, because there is a perception that this is not safe for me, even at the common service points like water points or distribution points, right? So for them, that perception is really very real, especially with the experience they have on their norms and practices from where their origins are. And then one interesting, when we engage with the women in WPP, one interesting part was when our women were empowered. They empowered themselves. They work with the community. They become community leaders. They've been seen. There was another component on safety, and that is threat on safety, because the male leaders now, or the community leaders, felt like, oh, the women are very active. So they see like they were with threat. So I think in terms of how we address that one, we need to work with the community gatekeepers, right? We need to work with the local authorities, the elders even in the community. So I think, Kristen, you were asking how we address them, right? So so that's from the community level. The contextual realities also is very important, like which phase in the Emmanuel said like 12-year refugee experience. So which phase are we in the displacement? So I've worked in a place where there are in transition. So people are moving towards a more durable solution, but probably for refugee setting, example in Cox's Bazar, where the durable solution is not in the foreseeable future. So how do we work with that context, right? How do we work on longer term solution? It's still a challenge for the teams who are working there. At the same time, example for leadership, the camp administration. So we train, we do capacity building, but there is turnover. So how do we deal with the leadership that I think Sophie was also mentioning, that we need good leaders. And internally, from our side as humanitarians or groups of support, resource capacity and staffing capacity, for example, in a humanitarian emergency response where it is project-based most of the time, right? So we start to implement a fast life-saving, and then how do we make sure that goes towards sustainability as well. So it's a challenge when your staff are double hatting as well. So we have colleagues actually who are joining us from Cox's, and they are CCM staff. At the same time, they are the WPP focals in the community. So how do we ensure that our offices work together in one approach to make sure that it's not only a project, but it's really a program that we want to see longer term in the different sectors that our offices are working in. So, Christine, if you have more questions. So in terms of addressing, so I mentioned, I just put on in my reflection like 5 C's, how to address this barrier. So community engagement, consultations with the stakeholders, and then the second C, creation of these women committees or networks, not just women, probably also with the other community members who need these networks where they can feel solidarity and they can work also together, right? And having in Cox's Bazar, we have also Rohingya camp volunteers. So they are the ones who also know. They were teachers previously during the pandemic, so they volunteered that we don't have jobs during the pandemic, so we want to be also a volunteer of community engagement, WPP. And then third, capacity building and sharing, as Emmy was mentioning, maybe building at the start and then strengthening and sharing, because many of them we have worked with are actually like they have skills, practical skills that they share themselves, and skills building. And then communication, how the IEC information campaign, feedback and information centers, these are all important. And lastly, collaboration. So we work with the community, but we work also with all the sector service providers. And we also work with the local NGOs to help address this one. So it's not so the good thing when it's a sector approach also. So we have women who are represented, example in WASH sector meeting or in health sector. So the women committees are sector focals also, that they can channel and refer the needs of the women, their community at large as well. Yeah. Christine, should I give
Thanks
back to
very
Emmy?
Yeah, no, that was great. And I mean, from both of yours and Emmanuel's inputs here, I think the main takeaways are that we need to create a safe and accessible space for participation for the displaced communities before even starting trying to ask them to participate. And then we need sustainable responses that actually take into account what they have raised as their prioritized needs. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Emmanuel. I feel I cut you off earlier. But you're muted, so you have to unmute yourself.
I think, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, just nothing to add, only if you allow me, I can wrap up to the question number 4. If it will be in another time, no problem. No problem.
Okay, we'll come back to you in a later question, okay? Perfect.
Okay, the question was saying that why should we engage youth and women? And how do you see the impact and success of the strategy in inherent participation? Specific example. And what I say here, to engage youth and women in participation, it is one of the best way to solve their problem, because you can't solve the problem of someone whom you don't know. So engaging them, it's a giving them chance to express their feeling and to see, to raise their voice so that you can help accordingly to their needs. And as we see, the woman and youth, they are like future of generation. Women, they are the one who produce those youth, and they know the challenge, and youth, they are power of generation. So engaging them, It's like building the nation and building the future of the nation. So what I can say on this one, it is a good practice to give them chance, to give them platform, and to do what they can do and to support them, because without engaging them, there is no any successful. And what I can ask international community who are there, who can do something, it's better to pay attention to those people who are in the camp, because the pain they have is you can't imagine it. Because imagine someone who live in one place, no way to move as he need. Even to be out of that place, you need to have what we call pass permit, because here you can't go everywhere without paper from government to move around. So those people, they need attention, they need help to build their future, because they are able to do anything. So thank you. That's what I want to add.
Thanks so much. It's great to get real life examples from you, and getting some help understanding the perspective. And also, I really loved what you said about the youth and the women. They're creating the future. So there's it's undeniable. We need to engage them. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
And I want to hand back to Emmy and see if you would like to add anything to the question on well, why should we engage women? And what's the elevator pitch to why should we engage women? And also, how would you see meaningful impact from engaging women? Do you have any examples?
Thanks, Kristen, and thanks, Emmanuel, for just great inputs. I totally agree. I believe that, I'm going to focus on the woman part a bit more, as Emmanuel already mentioned, the youth part, and as well as Sophia. Women and youth are the future of their communities, and actually women in displacement face multiplied and disproportionate impacts of displacement. This is something that we see in their everyday life, and they need to reinvent their future, shape their future not only for themselves but for their families as well. This is something to definitely acknowledge when focusing on women's participation. When we do have consultations with women very regularly as a part of our women's committees, like Ingrid mentioned, or in other kinds of engagements, we definitely see this burden on them, that they feel the responsibility to reshape the future for themselves and for their families and for their communities. That's why it's very important to have women's voice and women's active participation in the communities that would shape their future. And that's why, again, going back to putting them in the center for things that would affect them fully. What I see, where I see the success in terms of maximizing women's participation or seeing more effective and efficient results are having mainstreaming in all the activities that we do, having women participation in all the activities that we do, including them in cash for work activities. And again, when we consult with women, they say that we can do the jobs that men can do as well. For example, construction, building the roads, cleaning of the sites, so everything, they are very much willingness to participate. So mainstreaming is really important, and it's something that we should always keep in mind, but also having targeted interventions and targeted activities for women's participation is very crucial. I'm going to go back to my experience in Cox's Bazar before Mozambique. In Cox's Bazar, you would see, in any kind of interaction with women, they would feel much more comfortable speaking in front of other women rather than having any man's presence. I mean, it's not even about feeling comfort. in some contexts, they cannot speak in front of men. They cannot interact in front of men. So to have something meaningful for women's participation, you need to have targeted activities for women. This is very similar in Mozambique as well, in my experience, but I can definitely say in Cox's Bazar, it was really, really prevalent. Another thing that I mean, it has been already mentioned, livelihood activities for women is specifically very important, because livelihood doesn't only empower women for income generation or participation in economic life, but also their participation in governance and societal life, as well as in their households. So we also see that in most consultations that we conduct in Mozambique, and also where we see the most positive impact in terms of increasing the self-confidence of women or their participation, is the livelihood projects. And when I say livelihood projects, I'm not talking about very predetermined livelihood projects as well. Going back to meaningful participation, tailoring the livelihood projects based on what they want to do is really important, because again, because of our short period interventions or pressures in terms of funding, we have a tendency to come up with the trainings that we have in mind or the economic activities that we have in mind, and we often go with sometimes predetermined ideas and activities. But no, women can decide what livelihood activity they will do. Women can manage a business, and they can collectively have an action for their own community to meet the needs of their own community with the livelihood activities that they conduct and come up with. That's why it's really important to give voice to them. This is something that we are trying to do in Mozambique, from the first stage of creating a business until the last stage. We fully give them the freedom to choose what they want to do, all the business plans, or basically structuring, giving the trainings that they will receive. So we try to involve them in everything, and also we try to do it in groups too, again, to also contribute to the collective action, which we believe is really important for overall social cohesion of the sites. Another thing that we see really positive impact, and we hear a lot from the women, maybe you can see in some of the codes here, is awareness raising. This is something very simple compared to many other projects that we talk about here, but we see that women are very important players in awareness raising in their communities, because they convey the messages within themselves to their children and other community members as well. So women are not only, like, awareness raising for women are not only for women, but we see that it creates multiplier effect to create awareness raising in their communities. When we run a basic sensitization on hygiene practices or fire safety, we really see the concrete impact, how fire incidents are decreasing. I mean, in Cox's Bazar, that was the case, no? Like the cooking practices, how sensitization on cooking practices is changing, and it's exactly same in Mozambique. We need to give the ownership and leadership to women. That's also something that we sometimes miss in our processes. We need to also try to strengthen the leadership skills of women. This is something that we need to invest. It again goes beyond having the governance structures or committees, which is already an amazing start, but also we need to invest in that more, and we need to create environments that women can practice meaningful leadership, not symbolic leadership only. Another thing that I really give specific emphasis is engaging men and boys. For women's participation, it's really important in many contexts. I'm going to go back to Cox's Bazar and also what Ingrid mentioned. You need to engage with the gatekeepers. You need to engage with the community leaders. You need to engage with husbands. For women to be able to, I'm not even talking about effective participation, to be able to come to the activities that you conduct. It was the case in Cox's Bazar. It's similar in Mozambique. We need to sensitize husbands for the women's participation, but also for long term. For our livelihood activities, we sensitize husbands for men to be supportive in the household, but also be ready for failures, because we see that sometimes failures can affect a woman even more negatively than than before the period that intervention started. So in moment of husbands is really important, and for them to understand what we are trying to do, as well as the community leaders. So we are trying to, for example, practice now men's clubs, because in the consultations in Mozambique that comes out that men like hearing some sensitization messaging from men more because it's more impactful for them. So we now have men's clubs to champion women's participation as well. And of course, we always need to appreciate and celebrate the success in the public sphere, not only within women. Men need to see the success of women as much as women do as well. It is very important. And last but not least, having comprehensive interventions is very important. But again, we will come back to the maybe a bit donor point or funding point. Having persistence long-term but flexible funding for comprehensive interventions is really important. Where we see the most effective and efficient results in Mozambique, the sites that we can do more than one women's participation activities, which means investing in leadership, investing in livelihood, sensitizing men, investing in art activities. When we do all of them together in one site, we see the most highest impact and most longest time impact, basically. And also women in our groups prove that. For example, we have conducted Mozambique National Day, Women Day activity, and we left all the coordination for activities to women in the displacement sites. And what we have seen in those sites that we had comprehensive interventions, they came up with everything that they have been practicing themselves. They came up with dramas that they were talking about GBV, they were talking about women empowerment, gender equality, and it was a great result for us to see, much more than maybe an MNE survey, because when we gave the total freedom to them to create something, they created women empowerment results that they gained through all these activities. And of course, we need to keep this advocacy going, not only for CCCM practitioners to do women's participation, but like Ingrid said, having comprehensive interventions from all the sectors, from all the areas, to have women's participation in everything we do. Sorry for this very long.
Thanks so much, Emmy. That was amazing. Thank you for bringing in examples. It's a great way to showcase and highlight points. And thanks for highlighting that we need to engage men and boys in facilitating the participation of women and girls. And I think it's something that often is forgotten. And I just want to reiterate what Emmy said. If we have any donors out there, we want flexible funding, please, to be able to engage youth and women. With that, I'm going to hand back to you, Amalia.
Sure. Thanks, Christine. So we have one last question for panelists. We've been discussing about what participation means, what are the challenges, the barriers, and how we can overcome them, as well as how and why we should re-engage with youth and women. So let's talk about the how, no? So the practical, how do we do that? So I'm gonna pass this question to you, Sophia. Can you tell us a bit more about what strategies and tools have you used to create meaningful participation of youth, in this case, in decision-making in your context?
Thank you for asking this question. So what tools I've used to create a meaningful participation? So first of all, while working with young Ukrainians, I've seen the problem of informing and awareness. When I started working, I was wondering how many young people, we have talented young people who were doing lots of work with Ukrainians and in social area, but they didn't know about opportunities and about for the opportunities for them to take part in decision-making process. For example, I've seen Ukrainians who were studying, 16 years old teenagers who were learning the problem of lack of the water, and they're working on solutions how to make drinkable water available anywhere. I've seen young people who were working with Ukrainian refugees from the beginning of the war. They were staying on the borders for months in winter. They've seen thousands of refugees and they were actively helping them. I know young Ukrainian people who today, in this moment, they're building bomb shelters in the dangerous occupied areas. They're working for whole days and often even at nights. These are young people from 16 to 35 years old, and very often not many of them know about opportunities and about the decision-making process that actually they can make, that they can help. Young people do not know whom to share the experience with, but the experience is very significant. To solve this problem, first of all, I was thinking how I can spread information about opportunities among young people. And it required for me time to learn what tools are the most effective. And mostly I was using Telegram channels, I was using partnership of local organizations. So first of all, what I try to do to engage more young people is to be sure that everyone is aware about opportunities and that the experience is valuable and we are ready to hear from them. Second thing is training on project making and motivation. Very often young people, they don't know that actually they are ready. Again, I have seen the example of a young lady. She was working with Ukrainians. She was volunteering with Ukrainians in a church twice per week, 6 hours each time. She knew the most about Ukrainian community, about their needs, about how many people there are actually, what are main challenges in the community. But when she was invited into the project, she didn't take the leadership, mostly because she was not confident or not enough motivated. We've seen that instead she was invited to be assistant of an elder person who has no experience in volunteering actually, but has a big experience in designing the project or in taking leadership. And I've seen that this project actually, the people who are in the field today, whose experience is the most valuable, they are afraid by some reasons to take the leadership. So to solve this problem, we were providing lots of trainings, motivation trainings about engaging young people. Mostly we were talking to them what points and what changes they can bring and what are the main steps from the idea of the project to implementation and to final results, final reports. But also I think that motivation trainings, encouraging young people to do their best now, today, they are already ready. It will not be, in 10 years after they, no, it's time good today. It's what I'm trying to work now with the young people. And the third point is distributing the roles. We all are very different, and all of us, we have strong sides. And I was working with young people. I was impressed how sometimes these strong sides are not taken in consideration. For example, I'm going to tell you, when there was a man, he was 70 years old, and he was making Instagram video about the project, and the young people who were participating in the same project, they were making a paperwork. And as a result, the result was not very good because the roles were not distributed in the right way. So what today I'm working with the young people, what I'm going to tell them, that find your strong sides and think how you can use your strong sides exactly in this project. We all do have, and we should know how to use it. Another example I want to tell you, I had a very talented young man, 16 years old teenager, who was working with technologies, and he was making training about 3D printing for young Ukrainians. But he didn't have experience on working with audience, and he had very low voice. And as a result, it was hard to him to keep the audience attention and to keep everyone listening. But at the same time, in his team, he had a young person with a very strong voice who has experience working with the audience. So we were all the time saying that you should divide the roles in the right way, so everyone feels strong in what they're doing. So that this also tool can make the participation of young people meaningful and more effectively. So in the end, I wanted to tell to the older generation, don't neglect the youth. By involving young people, you can receive a strong, fast power, young people who are ready to learn. Also, the ideas that young people bring can be the decision of the problems that maybe people are looking for a long time. And for young people, I want to say, don't be afraid. It will not be better time when you will be stronger, younger, faster, able to learn lots of ideas. It will not happen later. No, it's time for you to act. It's time to you for make decisions today. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia, for your energy and your advocacy points. I think also the example of a 70-year-old person doing Instagram posts is linked to what other panelists said about identifying existing capacities and use them. Ingrid, I'm going to ask you if you want to add anything about any tools or strategies that you have used in the context you've worked to increase women's participation. I'm going to ask you to be very brief, though, because we also want to open the Q&A too.
So just cut me anytime. No, because it's very interesting, and I'll just build what Sophia mentioned and Emmy and Emmanuel. At the onset, I think for us, a commitment is important. So one of the strategies, which for me, like in Cox's Bazar, because I've been there for 4 years, inclusive of the pandemic time, where we still managed to work with the women remotely and with the community leaders, right? So it was commitment from senior management. All of IOM approach, for example, in that context, because when we have this commitment, we can say okay, we do this community engagement with women, not just a one-off project, but this would be supported also by the others. So like what happened in CCM, for example, we have also the cash-based intervention. We work also on cash assistance when in the mapping of needs, the women identified our men is asking us, we go to the meetings, we participate in trainings, but what do you put on the table, for example? So they also value the chance to be able to have income generation activities where livelihood is not considered acceptable in that context, right? So commitment at the onset at the senior management level was very helpful to facilitate this as a strategy. And there was really like a guide for all sectors, like WASH, MHPSS, protection. How do you mainstream participation in this context, women participation and the youth, right? So how does in WASH, for example, how do they engage in hygiene, sanitation, in the water point? So this has been laid out in terms of direct assistance or probably referral or case management for situations like protection, GVV cases. So for me, that facilitated the work that we were doing in the camp, because we know we have the support, we have the management at the back, right, to help us navigate in a challenging environment. So the second thing is buy-in from stakeholders. For example, I mentioned to you about the limited access or limited mobility, right, restrictions. So we need to engage with the authorities, the government, and to have a signed memorandum of agreement. It was important in that context because the camp managers, who are the camp in charge from the government, they are senior officials who were deployed to manage the camps, right? Sometimes they say okay, you have that agreement, but where's the paper? So the buy-in was very important because they can just cut anything. They just say okay, no, disband this one. I do not want this. You've done this with the former camp in church, but for me, I don't believe in this. So then if you have the buy-in, the agreement documented and all that, it helps also in the negotiation. So while we do a lot of community groundworks working, we also need to work at the policy level or the leadership level, right? So for me, that is in parallel, which was very important in context that we work in. Community buy-in at the same time. So when we piloted, so in terms of strategy, IOM example in Cox's, because Emmy mentioned about it, we have 18 camps that were in the area of responsibility. So UNHCR also manage a number of camps, but we cannot do this in 18 camps right away, right? As our colleagues were saying, like we need to start pilot it, test it, and see what are the lessons learned, and then we can expand it. So we started in a one camp, in the southern camp, and then we saw the interest, but there was a lot of groundwork with community elders. They were saying, what is this? And because that was in a context with the host community, because it's a refugee, so we need to involve the host community as well. So we even have like selection process where they were asking for allocation of host community women to be part of the project, to be part of it, right? So buy-in from the local leaders, the community elders, the community at large, and then capacity assessment as well. So capacity mapping amongst the community, at the same time capacity mapping from us, because we don't have all, right? When we learn of the UN Women training package, which starts from the self, because we can do lots of capacity building, but we saw that they want to see like, am I allowed to speak even? Can I hear my voice even, right? So they were really starting to find it, because back at the Rakhine, back in their community, it was the way it is. And no one was telling them that, yes, of course, you can hear your voice, you can have your voice heard. So we started with self training, MHPSS, even on marriage, what are the norms and practices. So capacity mapping within the humanitarian sphere, and also the local community, the NGOs who are working on this. So a lot of collaboration work and partnership. In terms of tools, WPP thankfully has a rich resource together with the NRC on the community engagement toolkit, the toolbox, if you want to access it, it's available. So we use stakeholders mapping, safety mapping, baseline assessment was important. And here we work really closely with our protection and GVB colleagues. Why? Because again, safe from the start. So the perception of safety in many of this consultation assessment, many sensitive things come out as well, right? So they do the referral and case management. So from the baseline, we do the capacity assessment. And then when they did the capacity mapping amongst the women, they say, we want this, but we also know how to do fishnet. We are weavers back home. We are sewers back home, or we also know how to make this chairs, right? Like from local crafts. So it's important to know like what are the needs, but also at the capacity, right? Because they definitely, as you all know, have their own capacities they can contribute for their own community. So basically, yeah,
I'm gonna
those
ask
are
you,
some of the tools. Yeah, I know.
stop here. I'm really sorry, but I just want to allocate a bit of time for other questions from participants. Very well noted on this multi-level strategy to achieve participation on the ground, and also to mention that some of the tools that you mentioned, the WPP toolkit, the safety mapping, and CCCM toolkit, we're gonna share with the participants at the end of the session, so you can locate all these tools. So I think we can open the Q&A part. I think there's some questions online. Let's engage first with people online. Maybe Christine, you can let us know what are the burning questions online.
Yeah, there's so Tuba Siddiqui has a question. It's related to the community buy-in that Ingrid was talking about. They're saying, like mentioned before, it takes time in case of a displacement, especially when the project timeline is too brief, like 3 months. How do we build the trust on engaging with the communities in ensuring they trust the CFM, so the complaints and feedback mechanism, and how to engage with them on PSEA, prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse, messaging, especially in a conservative setting, and especially when the language also do not have such words and is taboo. So this might be related to when Ingrid was talking about her work before, when there was no language for participation, for example. But any panelists who want to answer that question is very welcome.
I'll suggest maybe the CCCM colleagues in there's mention of CFMs. Maybe Emmy or Ingrid, you want to take a stab at this one?
I can very briefly mention that I think for the trust for CFMs, I mean, obviously we need some groundwork and we need the community engagements already to be in place a bit, at least for communities to have trust for our own staff. And obviously even designing things with them really helps. Also, like I was going to come to PSEA messaging, I guess going back to the communities to design things is very, very important. And of course, working with PSEA and protection colleagues, which I'm not the expert on that. So always involving them in the processes and in the design, very important. For CFMs, I guess the trust mainly comes from delivering results. When people come to CFM to report a problem, an issue, and if they don't see any results over a long period of time, it's really difficult to have the trust on CFM. At least showing that we are working on this, or like delivering regular feedback back to the communities, because I think two-way CFMs work much more efficiently and effectively than one-way CFMs, but obviously delivering results. So like one part of CFM is obviously advocating to all the sectors. Putting and establishing CFM itself is not enough and is not the ultimate point. It's an advocacy point of point for all the sectors, but as well as us to deliver more. So I mean, trust is not super simple concept, although we always use it in a very simple way in terms of our wording, but trust takes time. And again, with 3 months period funding, it's really difficult to do most of these things, and it's the reality. That's something that we can only push until a point, but there's always the risk of doing things in a symbolic way, which is sometimes more harmful than doing nothing. So yeah.
Can I add quickly on the protection PSEA? So I mentioned we need to work also with our colleagues who are like specialists, like protection and PSEA focals. It was very interesting that we managed also to build PSEA champions to raise awareness. So the women themselves were also trained and to be aware of this one and how to refer this, right? So amongst the community, it was important that there were also information keepers and referral makers. So they were part of the PSEA champions, which our protection and CCM built and created with the support from the task force. So, and one thing that I need to mention, we need to have as people who work in the community in terms of build trusting, right? This was our challenge in Ukraine because we don't manage camps there in the context, right? So we work with site managers or who are the ones responsible. But in contexts where we can be having our staff, so it was important that these people, our staff and our community volunteers are there every day. They go to the camp every day. So it builds relationship, it builds trust amongst them, and they work together. So this is different when we implement, right? From an implementer to someone who are living there with them and working together with them. So for me, that was really, and we have many colleagues from Cox's, and they are the WPP focal who made it possible.
Thank you, Ingrid. I don't know if you have any other question online or in the room. Okay, we have some questions in the room. Maybe we can
let's take one from the room.
Maybe can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Mohammed Mutairan from OCHA. This is very important topic, and it's become like a popular trend of accountability to affected population, community engagement. But we still face a lot of challenges when we try to implement and try to get the outcomes that we planned for. So I have a question and how to address the challenges related to the humanitarian system itself, because the system is designed like a top-down operation system. And we know it is important that we engage the community community engagement, not a small project or initiatives that should be covered all the humanitarian operation, let's say, to save the cost and also have let's say big impact, sustainable impact of the projects. I'm working in now in Syria, and I also work with OCHA Somalia and response to the famine. So we faced a lot of challenges related to the system itself. Started with the donors, with the agencies' policies. Sometimes we face competitions, let's say, between the humanitarian actors on the ground. So a lot of things need this need to be systemized, need to be structured. So very good examples received, but still it's a small, let's say, projects or initiatives. It's not covering the system. So I need to hear from you about this. Thank you.
Interesting question.
Just quickly, because it's a very interesting question and I don't have all the answers, but what I remember at the interagency level, right? Interagency Standing Committee, the IASC, we don't want to use this jargon, but like the gender marker, for example, sometimes it's a tick on the box, right? But if we really want to make it really happen, like these gender markers are also not only for donor advocacy, like, okay, we tick the box and then we get the funding, right? But this is a part of the commitment then. So like, for example, I can only speak with in Cox's, for example, where we work, is that then we need for the programming part, then we try to see all our sectors. If we put like, okay, we have a gender marker example 1 on this one, what are we doing actually in the WASH interventions, for example, in shelter interventions, in protection, MHPS, so all the sectors that the office or the agency is responding to, right? So it then can be translated from commitment to operationalizing it. And I know, like, from small initiatives, we need to have the support, right, from programming level. And because of that, for example, in WPP, it started from seed funding, but because of this support from the office, then the multi-year, like there was a big fire in the camps, and then ECHO, for example, provide support. And then our program management also provided support for how the women and the community can deal with this fire safety, fire prevention, and fire response. So having that approach of not just a project, as we were saying, but really like as a mainstream in all the sectors we've been working, even in TRU, in transition and recovery, which we have been working towards development, right? So I would be interested to know also your reflection on that. But I think, yeah, at the system level, it needs really more robust and advocacy on that one.
Can I just add one? Sure.
I also wanted to add something maybe from the from the Women's Participation Project, maybe perhaps globally. And as the colleague highlighted, sometimes these projects are like small ones compared to the volume of our operations. However, we've learned in a few years of implementation of project that these projects also allow us to test what works and what doesn't work. So in some of the countries that have been implementing the project for a long time, for a few years now, some of the activities that were successful in engaging specific groups that before they were engaged, they have been mainstreamed into the regular operation. So it's true that these projects have like limited impact in terms of number, but at the same time, they also allow us to see what works, so it can be scaled up, at least in that particular context. So sometimes I think it's a useful tool to see how this can be replicated broader.
Always it's useful. I'm not saying it's not, the small projects or initiatives not useful. It's useful for sure. And we are encouraging, and we are starting from this. Yeah, just to clarify. Thank you.
Just to add very basic, I think we have the misconception of assuming that coordination will always have idea about what communities think. I think it's I still make this mistake of assuming that going to a cluster meeting and expecting people to know what is really going on the ground, but it's often not valid in most contexts, just to be very frank. And I guess it starts there, right? Like when clusters are very distant from the ground or in reality, or like the management of clusters, it's also an impact. So I guess not to promote CCCM here, but also CCCM cluster plays a very important role in that. So we need more in all coordination mechanisms, more buy-in for the role of CCCM, because CCCM is the cluster that brings the community perspectives to all the coordination system. So I guess it's always important to remember in all the responses where there is CCCM, all the cluster system should be contributing, but also benefiting from the CCCM cluster, and not treating CCCM cluster as something completely separate, but having even joining the meetings of CCCM cluster from all the clusters is something very basic, but very important at the same time. So I guess it's really helpful for overall coordination to be improved.
I'm gonna try to follow the order that the first. I think we can take a couple of two questions. So yeah.
I'm Giovanni, co-founder of Second Tree. We work in refugee camps in Greece, and we do training on community building and community merging in 22 countries. Do you think there are any practices that are common sense in the humanitarian sector that are somehow against participation? Like, for example, we saw that one of the sort of mantra, like being friendly, not friends, works against participation, because you maybe counterintuitively being friendly somehow undermines your reputation, because you want to be saying to people, you know, your asylum case doesn't look very good, or you don't tell them, yeah, maybe tomorrow you will get this. If you know they're not going to get this, you say no. But at the same time, you need to be more friends than friendly. If you want them to participate, you have to participate with them. You have to spend time with people, have tea with them, like in a way being part of their community if you want them to be part of your community. So how do we bridge this? Because of course there are many good reasons to have these policies, you know, like to have that kind of professional distance, but that somehow undermines participation. I was thinking to Emmy because of what she was saying about trust, but anyone.
I mean, I think you have a really good example. I can think of two things. One is, it's going to be very specific example, but not well designed and well implemented vulnerability criteria is against participation in a really big sense, because that's the main thing that the assistance and services are based on. And when the community doesn't buy this vulnerability criteria, it's really difficult to do even the most basic community engagement in that community, because you ruin the trust from the start. So when vulnerability criteria, and given the current situation of the humanitarian world and funding cuts, it's the trend to implement even in more and more countries. Then we see that especially for very vital assistance, like for food, wash, things like that. It's like if it's not well designed and well established, it's a huge point. And another thing that, again, I'm going to come back to mainstreaming. When we only try to do community engagement in a very specified manner, we miss the whole part of, like, I'm sure we have that, and I can remember in Cox's Bazar too, same in Mozambique, in every context. You go to a meeting to talk about how to increase women participation. You get questions on food, shelter, and how this assistance is being delivered. Or also for persons with disabilities, right? You go to do tailored assistance for persons with disabilities. You hear about the general shelter or food problem. Without addressing or without making general programs participatory or like mainstreaming participation, also having very tailored and specific community engagement and participation project is not enough. So these are two things that I can think of.
Just quickly, if we don't respond to their needs and speak about participation as an aspiration, then it would not have the buy-in, right? So we need also to be really responsive to their daily needs.
Assessment fatigue as well. Like if you go back, ask, don't deliver, you can't be participatory at all. Yeah.
Okay, so people are leaving because it's time, but maybe we can take one last question if people agree.
She was before. Okay, that's very kind of you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm from Opinion. We're a digital engagement platform that aims to amplify people's voices in crisis situations. Thanks a lot for the session. I was wondering, building a bit on what has been said now, if you can share a few very concrete strategies on indeed breaking down bad news to people, because all of us that actually try to have people participate and engage with them know that there is a limit to resources, funding, opportunities that we have. And indeed, we need to give results and deliver for people to keep trust, but we also know how hard it is sometimes. So do you have some concrete communication strategies on how you communicate with the people that participated with you in such situations?
Bad, right? We have an experience working in the South camps, example that the camp will be closed, and it's not like a process where they were consulted, right? So how do you break this news and manage the news, right? So for the community, so for us, like we at CCCM, we always try to engage and work with them and to be aware of what's happening. So they are themselves, like if they sit at the sector meeting or camp meetings, for example, so they are aware when the government will announce like there will be camp closure, or sometimes it's abrupt camp closure in that case, right? So we need to be on the ground with them together with our other actors and to help to deal with this. And then I remember for our women committees, we have like many meetings where they were raising all their fears and listening to these fears at the same time, trying to assess where they can transition and they can move. So we accompanied them as well in transitioning to other camps. So it's not only like, okay, here, this is where our project is, but really to help like transition where they can find shelter, safe spaces for them. Yeah, but it was it was really a very sad process because they've been displaced already, right? So, and then this secondary displacement is even more difficult for them. But yeah, it's important communication and transparency, and also working with the community leaders.
I think, thank you, Ingrid. I think I would also like to hear maybe if Sophia or Emmanuel from their perspective want to add something on this question about what's the best communication strategy when, delivering, let's say, news about limitation of resources, or you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you so much. We know there is a limitation of resources, but as we said, we should prioritize because, as I was mentioning, we have talented people who can do better anything. For instance, I'm professional barber. I work as a shaver in the salon. But due to the financial issues, now my talent is kept there. But such people who have talent like that, if they get such support, like specific support, why even if in the camp there is like microfinancial, which can support them doing what they are able to do. Even if it's come as a loan, it can support and it can improve the life of those people who are sitting there doing nothing while they have capability to do something. Thank you. That's what I want to add on that.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Sophia, you wanted to also say something from the communication perspective, maybe how to deliver not so good news?
Thank you. I just had a few thoughts about how to rise up the trust in the community, and the question about strategics, how to communicate with people. So first of all, I remember how I was starting. Lots of things were building on the personal relationships. I mean, people sometimes, especially they were not very trusting to organizations, not to all organizations. And we were trying to firstly go with the community to the events, and we had activities where we just were communicating with each other, especially if you are in humanitarian organization who works with some community that is not open for foreigners, right? It's okay if you show good personal examples. That's why I was talking about dedication in the beginning. It requires time and efforts, lots of. Secondly, find a person to whom community trusts and whom you can build relationship with. It can be a community or organization. I remember how important it was also if some local people from the host community, for example, we were talking to Romanians who were then suggestion to take Ukrainians to work. So firstly, we engage the person who trusts, whom community trusts, the person or organization. And secondly, of course, as it was mentioned about the trusting, about the results, very important that what you bring is really what community needs. Because if it's not, it will not work. It's you should. I always was talking to young people that if you do not have people at your activities, there are two questions. There are two problems might be. Firstly, what you are doing is not effective, so it's not what actually people need. Or secondly, maybe you do not you have not informed enough people or enough communities about what you're doing. Maybe just people need it, but they don't know. So it's one of the points. Thank you.
I think also maybe just to add, sometimes like it's better, obviously the information needs to be shared, and when we omit some sort of information because we think it's bad or negative, like we create space for rumors. So it's better to address the information in a respectful way, but say it. For example, I'm thinking again on the Women's Participation Project. When we do consultations with community, they don't get anything in reward from these consultations. And this is said clearly, there's no direct benefit from participating in this discussion. However, with this information that you're going to give to us, we're going to try to tailor our way of doing so it adapts to what you need. So obviously it requires training for the staff doing this because people have immediate needs and you need to manage that. But obviously it has to be said clearly and upfront. And I think that's also linked to trust, because even if it's bad news when you deliver, people will trust you when you come with different news. But if you try to avoid information, then you will break the trust with the community.
And just one thing, that we often have an assumption that communities cannot handle honesty if it's bad, but they go through wars, they go through natural disasters. They are very resilient already. Like their resilience is already there. So we should also trust their ability to cope with the challenges in that sense. Yeah.
Okay.
We are not the worst thing that will happen to them.
We have to cut the session here. What I propose is for those questions that were not answered, if you want for those colleagues that questions were not answered, you can come and ask the questions on bilateral, and then we're more than happy to, share tools or chat now or, respond by email, but just we have to go because somebody will use this room. I don't know if you want to wrap it up, Elena?
Yes, maybe just to wrap it up on the discussion and all the good points and recommendation we got from advocate for long-term funding to trust community and the capacity and empower them to really get the potential out. To do this, we want to just wrap it up with directing you with some of the tools we mentioned also during the discussion, from obviously the WPP. You have the website there. You can find the different tools and links to useful resources, the community coordination toolbox that was mentioned several times during the session. Again, it's a very practical tools divided in chapters where you can download useful resources. The IFRC community engagement app that is really like a hub where you can get from assessment to webinars to training resources, and the IAC youth guidelines that should be really the go-to guides to engage youth. And they also have a practical sectorial tip sheet included where you can find practical action to include in your programming to engage with youth. And last but not least, the QR code to join the Community Engagement Forum. As Christine mentioned, is really an active platform. Emmy and Ingrid are also member here, very active member of it. So you can access it and You will get notification when tools are shared. There are different hashtags that you can use as well on different topics related to community engagement. So really a great interactive platform to share material and get materials as well and tools. And thank you so much, and sorry to be over time. Thank you so much for your and to Christine online and Sophie and Emmanuel that stayed online despite the connectivity issues. Thank you so much.
Bye guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sophia. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Thank you too.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Good job. Nice to see you both. Thanks, everyone.